Imagine flying thousands of miles to, the sun-drenched coast of southern Europe.
Right, the absolute dream vacation.
Exactly. You've been planning this for months. You step out of your accommodation ready for that perfect vacation morning, only to find yourself sliding backward down a 40-degree, incredibly slick granite hill.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you are completely soaked in horizontal sheets of freezing rain, desperately gripping a suitcase with a shattered wheel, while a flimsy travel umbrella violently inverts and snaps in the Atlantic wind.
Just a total nightmare.
Welcome to Porto in 2026.
It's such a profound shock to the system. I mean, for anyone who arrives expecting this gentle, breezy Mediterranean stroll.
Right.
And that specific scenario, the rain, the granite, the broken luggage, it is playing out every single day on those streets.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are taking a deep dive today into the brutally honest, on-the-ground reality of traveling to Porto, Portugal.
Yeah, because the reality is wild.
For literally years, the internet has been aggressively selling the city to you as the ultimate travel hack. You've seen the pitches, right? It's the cheaper, quieter, more authentic alternative to Lisbon.
The famous hidden gem.
Exactly, the hidden gem. But the actual data, the live logistics of 2026, they paint a drastically different picture. We're looking at a destination defined by intense topographical bottlenecks, rapid hyper-gentrification, and a landscape that is, honestly, physically and financially punishing if you aren't thoroughly prepared.
Our mission today is to synthesize these hard travel truths. We're going to extract the real data and help you navigate the massive gap between that heavily curated Instagram reality and the deeply physical experience of actually existing in Porto.
And to understand why the city operates the way it does and why it fights back against travelers so aggressively, I mean, we really have to start from the ground up.
Literally from the ground up.
Literally. The physical geography here isn't just a backdrop. It dictates absolutely every single aspect of your trip.
It really does.
So let's talk about that ground, because I think people hear hilly city and they picture, I don't know, San Francisco or Rome.
Right, which are manageable.
Yeah, but Porto is functioning as a literal topographical bottleneck. We're talking about a city where 90% of all tourism is compressed into exactly 1.5 square kilometers of steep, unforgiving granite.
It's tiny.
It's basically trying to pour a gallon of water into a shot glass that's tilted at a 30-degree angle. How does a city even function when almost every single visitor is trapped in a footprint that small?
Well, it barely functions, to be completely honest. And what's fascinating here is how the unchangeable physical geography actively resists modern mass tourism.
It fights back.
It totally fights back. The infrastructure is practically screaming under the weight of human volume. And the most glaring manifestation of this is what's known as the Ribera Squeeze.
The Ribera Squeeze?
Yeah, this occurs right at the Dom Luis I Bridge, which acts as this massive structural funnel between the historic center of Porto on one side of the river and the port wine cellars of Gaia on the other.
Wait, but isn't every historic European river crossing a bit of a bottleneck? Like, what makes this specific bridge such a trap?
It's the geometry of the river valley combined with the city's zoning. You have hundreds of thousands of people trying to funnel across this one specific point simultaneously.
Because there's no other way across.
Exactly. There is no alternative walking route that connects the prime tourist zones. It creates literal physical crowd crush. So from May to October, the illusion of a romantic stroll across the river, it's completely shattered. You are shoulder to shoulder in a solid wall of human traffic.
And the city can't just fix this.
Right.
Like, they can't exactly build a modern 8-lane pedestrian walkway right through the middle of a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
No, absolutely not. There is no spatial way to fix the river crossing geometry. The city's bones are fixed.
Yeah.
And those bones are made of slick granite. Which brings us to the second unchangeable trap that catches almost everyone off guard, which is the weather.
Oh man, the Atlantic weather trap. This is where I think people really miscalculate. You look at a map, you see Portugal, you see Southern Europe, and your brain automatically defaults to...
Sunshine.
Yeah, sunshine, light jackets, maybe sipping wine on a terrace.
It's a huge geographical misconception. Porto is not on the Mediterranean. It is staring directly into the teeth of the Atlantic Ocean.
Or just rough.
Very. To put the raw data into perspective, Porto receives over 1,200 millimeters of rain annually.
Which is double the annual rainfall of London.
Double.
Just let that sink in for a second. You are going to a place that is twice as wet as a city globally famous for being rainy.
And the mechanism of that rain is totally different too. Like in London, you often get a mild vertical drizzle. You can walk through it.
Sure, just put your hook.
Right. But in Porto, the winter rain comes in off the ocean in horizontal sheets. It's driven by intense Atlantic winds.
Which explains that opening scenario we talked about. It's not just that you're getting wet, it's that the horizontal wind turns your umbrella inside out, and the sheer volume of water turns those steep, unyielding granite cobblestones into active physical hazards.
Yeah, you aren't just walking in the rain. You are navigating a frictionless 30-degree slope while being pushed by the wind.
It becomes man versus nature in the middle of a city street.
Exactly.
Mm.
So if the geography is a permanent bottleneck and the Atlantic weather patterns are a fixed threat, the only variable you can actually control to protect yourself is your calendar.
Right, the when.
Yeah, when you choose to step into this matrix determines everything about your experience.
Okay, so let's break down this calendar matrix. But before we get to the specific months, we really have to understand the underlying economic reality of Porto in 2026.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you aren't just competing with the weather, you are competing with a hyper-gentrified economy that's been compressed into that tiny 1.5 square kilometer footprint.
The gentrification trajectory here has been staggering. It is largely driven by the influx of digital nomads and the long-term effects of golden visas.
Can we pause and define that real quick?
What?
Because golden visa gets thrown around a lot in the news. How does that actually change the physical street a traveler walks down?
Good question. A golden visa is essentially a program where foreign nationals are granted residency in exchange for making significant investments, usually by purchasing real estate.
Okay.
So when you have an influx of foreign wealth buying up properties in a very concentrated historic center, property values skyrocket far beyond what the local Portuguese wages can actually support.
So it pushes the locals out.
Exactly. The cascade effect of this real estate speculation means the traditional businesses, the small, affordable local eateries called tascas, the neighborhood bakeries, they are decisively priced out of their leases.
So they disappear, and what replaces them?
Specialty coffee shops charging London prices, high-end concept stores, boutique hotels.
Right, the usual suspects.
Yeah. The local resident population gets pushed out to the periphery, and the historic center becomes entirely reliant on a transient short-term population.
And that transient population absolutely floods the city during peak season. If we look at the data for July and August, it doesn't just call it busy. It literally labels those months a total logistical failure.
A complete failure. Crowd density hits 100% of capacity.
Which sounds impossible.
It feels impossible when you're there. The physical streets simply cannot accommodate the bodies. Avenues like Rua das Flores and the entire Riverside Ribeira district, they operate at severe overcapacity from 10 in the morning until midnight.
You literally cannot walk at a normal pace.
No, you're just shuffling. And the financial penalty for being there in August is massive. Accommodation prices spiked by 45% compared to May.
Wow, 45%.
Yeah. But here's the detail that really highlights the failure of the system.
Yeah.
You cannot walk into a mid-tier restaurant in August without a 48-hour prior booking.
That's insane for a vacation. You're just walking around, you get hungry at 7:00 p.m., and your only options are either a €100 tasting menu or standing in line for an hour for a slice of generic pizza.
The spontaneity of travel is completely dead in the summer.
Which points us toward what the sources call the secret season.
Yes, the secret season.
If summer is a failure and winter is a horizontal rainstorm, the mathematical sweet spot for Porto is late September through the end of October.
That is the absolute best time to go.
Why specifically those 6 weeks, though?
Well, the numbers align perfectly. The crowd density halves as the summer vacationers leave. And because the demand drops, accommodation prices fall by about 30% from their peak.
Nice.
But most importantly, while the weather is cooling down, the heavy, unbroken Atlantic rain cycle hasn't fully established itself yet.
So you get the breathing room without the hypothermia?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you deviate from that sweet spot, you hit some wild anomalies. Like, let's look at January.
Oh boy, January.
Yeah, you're looking at a 40% price drop, which sounds incredibly tempting for a budget traveler.
Right, you see those cheap sites and think, why not?
But you are dealing with extreme rain and temperatures hovering around 5 degrees Celsius.
So you're paying less, but your trip becomes an exercise in enduring the elements. Every time you leave your hotel, you are just fighting the cold and the slick granite.
It's miserable.
Uh-huh.
And then you have June. June seems like a safe bet, right? The weather is warming up, but it's before the July rush.
Except June brings the massive San Juan festival.
Oh, yeah.
It is a gigantic citywide street party. If you
Yeah.
don't know what's happening, you book your trip, and suddenly you are hit with a 35% price hike on everything, and the streets are total chaos.
Absolute chaos. But the most dangerous anomaly on the calendar, that's the November trap.
Oh, this one catches so many people. I can completely see why, too. You look at your phone in late October, you want a cheap getaway before the holidays. You see the latitude of Portugal and think, hey, I'll book a November trip for a mild winter escape.
Right. And you are walking directly into a wall of water.
A literal wall.
You are almost guaranteed weeks of unbroken, heavy precipitation. You are essentially booking a vacation to sit inside a damp granite building while the streets turn into rushing rivers right outside your window.
And if you do find yourself trapped in the center during any of these extremes, whether it's the August crowd crush or the November deluge, your only escape valve is geographic migration.
You have to literally flee the center.
Precisely. To find any breathing room, you must physically move away from that 1.5 square kilometer bottleneck.
Yeah, you have to migrate east to residential zones like Bonfim, or take the tram west to the coastal area of Foz do Douro. The center cannot hold you.
Okay, so let's assume you played the calendar matrix perfectly.
You're a genius. You booked for mid-October.
Exactly. You avoided the November rain trap, you dodged the August crowds, and you missed the June festival surcharge.
You did everything right.
You still have to survive the landing, because the first 24 hours on the ground are where all of your romantic, cinematic expectations of Porto are going to be violently stress-tested.
The arrival logistics are an immediate, unforgiving filter. Like, let's start at Francisco Sacarnero Airport.
Okay.
You land, you collect your bags, and you walk up to the metro ticket machine to buy your transit card, the Andante card, to get to the city.
And instantly, you are standing in a financial minefield. The zoning system for these transit cards is notoriously confusing. To get from the airport to the city center, you need a very specific ticket, a Z4 ticket, which costs exactly $2.15.
But the interface doesn't make that obvious to a tired traveler who just stepped off a transatlantic flight.
No, not at all.
Tourists constantly guess they buy a Z2 or Z3 ticket by mistake, thinking it's, close enough, or they just tap the first option they see.
And close stuff doesn't exist here. The consequence of having the wrong zone ticket isn't a polite warning from a conductor.
Oh, definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
It is an immediate, non-negotiable 120 fine.
Unbelievable.
And it's enforced by highly aggressive tag inspectors who board the trains specifically to check tourists. They do not care that you just landed. They do not care that the machine was confusing.
That is over $100 gone within your first hour in the country.
Just poof, gone.
For a budget traveler, that's 3 full days of food and spending money completely wiped out before you even see the river.
It's a brutal welcome.
Very brutal. But, okay, let's say you didn't fly. Maybe you took the train up from Lisbon. You booked the 32 Alpha Pendular high-speed train.
It sounds incredibly elegant.
Right. You're watching the countryside blur by, drinking a coffee.
But the trap here is geographical. The high-speed train does not drop you at the beautiful, centrally located São Bento station.
Where does it drop you?
It drops you at Campana station, which is miles away from the historic center.
So your elegant high-speed journey ends with you dragging all your heavy luggage onto a crowded local commuter train just to reach the center of the city.
Exactly.
And that exact moment, dragging the luggage, initiates what I think is the most fascinating part of this data. The psychological arc of arriving in Porto.
Oh, the psychological arc is so real.
It is a highly predictable cycle that almost every traveler experiences, right?
Yeah, it happens in 4 distinct phases. Hours 1 through 3 are defined by euphoria. You finally walk out of São Bento station, you look up, and you are surrounded by these gorgeous, towering buildings covered in intricate blue azuleo tiles.
You look down that massive, sweeping hill toward the Douro River, and you feel like you are standing on a movie set.
It's stunning.
The architecture is gorgeous, the light is hitting the terracotta roofs perfectly. You are thrilled.
But inevitably, hours 4 through 8 arrive, and that brings logistical friction.
Yeah, the euphoria wears off fast.
Because you realize your boutique hotel or Airbnb is located halfway up a 40-degree cobbled street. It's 30 degrees Celsius outside. You are hauling a 20-kilogram suitcase up an incline that actively challenges your Achilles tendon.
Which bleeds right into hours 9 through 14. Financial shock.
The worst phase.
You finally drop your bags. You are exhausted and sweating. You walk back down the massive hill to the riverside in Ribera to celebrate. You sit at a cafe with a view of the bridge. You order 2 basic drinks, and the waiter hands you a bill for €28.
Ouch.
In that instant, the illusion that Portugal is this ultra-cheap, budget-friendly destination shatters.
You realize you are paying prime global city prices.
Right.
But that shock forces the final phase, hours 15 through 24, which is recalibration. You accept the reality of the city's mechanics. You walk 5 blocks uphill, away from the tourist zone. You find a local neighborhood tasca tucked down an alley.
And you order a glass of House Douro red wine for €3.
And suddenly, the city begins to make sense.
I love that arc. And there is this incredible, visceral anecdote in the sources that captures this exact recalibration moment perfectly.
Oh, the suitcase story.
Yes. Imagine this. A traveler is dragging a carry-on suitcase up a notoriously steep street called Rua de 31 de Janeiro.
Just a punishing hill.
It's October, and a sudden, violent Atlantic downpour starts. The wheels on the suitcase completely fail on the slick, wet cobblestones. They just stop spinning.
Because the irregular granite completely jams the small plastic wheels.
Exactly. So the bag turns into a 15-kilogram anchor. The traveler is slipping backward, freezing in the rain, trying to drag this dead weight up a mountain. Finally, they just break. They give up.
You can't fight it.
They pull into the nearest doorway, dripping wet, completely defeated. And it turns out to be this tiny, warm bakery.
I love this part.
It smells intensely of cinnamon and damp wool coats from the locals inside. They order a €1 espresso, lean against the counter, and have this massive epiphany. Fighting Porto's geography is exactly how you ruin your trip.
It's so true.
You cannot muscle your way through the city. You have to move at the exact pace the hills dictate.
And that sensory detail you mentioned, the cinnamon of damp wool, the espresso, it's crucial because Porto has a very distinct, heavily layered sensory profile.
What do you mean by layered?
Well, the city communicates its geography through your senses. If we map it out, starting down at the bottom by the river in Gaia, the air is physically heavy. It smells of damp riverstone and the rich, sweet scent of aging port wine slowly leaking from massive wooden barrels in the cellars.
Okay.
Then you walk up the hill into the Baixa district, the upper central area, and the smell shifts entirely.
To what?
The heavy wine scent is replaced by the sharp, bitter aroma of espresso, pulling from dozens of cafes, mixed with the heavy, fatty smoke of grilled meats pouring out of the exhaust vents of traditional restaurants.
That sounds incredible, actually. But what about the sound?
The soundscape is equally intense. It is not a quiet city. The audio profile is dominated by seagulls aggressively fighting over scraps, the constant metallic echoing rattle of the metro crossing that high iron bridge.
Oh, that bridge is loud.
Very loud. And underneath all of it, a relentless, overwhelming hum of plastic rolling suitcases bouncing violently over uneven granite.
That suitcase sound is the soundtrack of modern Europe, honestly. So you're exhausted from the climb, you're overwhelmed by the noise, your calves are burning. Finding a place to retreat and sleep becomes your absolute top priority.
It really does.
But choosing your base camp in this vertical city is a high-stakes decision. Where you sleep dictates the entire flow of your daily existence. This is the accommodation chessboard.
Let's analyze the specific zones, starting with the most famous and frankly most dangerous, Ribera. This is the postcard zone, located right down at the river level.
Right. If you see a photo of Porto on social media, it's Ribera. Colorful houses stacked on top of each other right by the water.
Exactly. But the reality of staying there is harsh. First, it is entirely populated by tourists. There is virtually zero local life left.
Which is sad, but expected.
Yeah. Economically, a bed in a shared backpacker hostel down there will cost you €45 a night. A mid-range hotel, which typically buys you a very tiny, oddly shaped room due to the historic architecture, sits around €180.
That's pretty steep.
And luxury properties, particularly across the water in Gaia, like the Yeet Man, start at €450 and go up rapidly.
But the real trap with Ribera isn't just the inflated price tag, it's the acoustics. I want to explain how this works because it's fascinating.
It's awful, is what it is.
Well, yeah, those steep granite walls we keep talking about, they act like a massive canyon. The noise from the street performers with amplifiers, massive crowds, and late-night drinkers, it doesn't dissipate.
It has nowhere to go.
Exactly. It bounces directly off the stone buildings and funnels straight up into your 180 a night window until 3 o'clock in the morning.
You are paying a massive premium for a view, but you are sacrificing your ability to sleep.
So you think, okay, I'll avoid the river, I'll stay higher up. That brings us to the Baixa and Sei districts. These are the upper central zones. You are closer to the main transport hubs like the train station.
And a mid-range room up here is slightly cheaper, hovering around 140 euros a night. The area is heavily commercialized, full of boutique shops and concept stores.
That's great, right?
But staying here presents a massive topographical trap.
Right. Because of the physical commitment required to move between the river and your room, if you stay up in Baisha, but you spend your morning exploring the wine cellars down by the river, you cannot easily just pop back to your room to drop off a jacket or change your shoes before dinner.
No, absolutely not.
The steep climb makes that a grueling, sweaty 30-minute hike. When you leave your hotel in the upper districts, you are committing to being out for the entire day.
Which brings us to the debate over the outer residential zones. Bonfim versus Sidofeda. If you want to escape the traps of the center, you have to look here.
Tell me about Bonfim first.
Bonfim is located to the east. It is one of the few areas where you have a flat 15-minute walk into the central chaos.
Flat being the magic word in Porto.
It changes everything. Mid-range rooms drop significantly, down to around 100 Nina. Bonfim has a deeply local, lived-in vibe. The downside is that because it is residential, it can feel completely dead and quiet at night.
Okay, so conversely, you have Sedorfeda to the northwest. This is the artistic independent zone. It's full of galleries, independent bars, and local life.
Yeah, it feels authentically alive without the grittiness you sometimes encounter near the eastern transport hubs around Bonfim.
So what does this all mean? It sounds to me like booking a hotel in Porto is essentially picking your preferred punishment.
That's a great way to put it.
You literally have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I want to lose my sleep to the echoing canyon noise in Ribeira? Do I want to lose my breath constantly climbing the hills in Baisha? Or do I want to lose the vibrant nightlife by retreating to the quiet, flat streets of Bonfim?
We connect that to the bigger picture. Zoning your stay isn't just about picking a nice view or finding a good price per night. It is fundamentally about energy management.
Energy management?
Yeah, your geographical location dictates exactly how many calories you're going to burn just trying to get to a cafe for breakfast.
Speaking of calories, once you've established your base camp and you need to recover all that energy you spent climbing, you have to eat. And the data makes it incredibly clear that in Porto, you are navigating two entirely different economies happening simultaneously on the exact same streets.
It is a starkly two-tier food economy driven by elevation.
Elevation.
Yeah. Down at the river level, you have what the researchers call the Instagram track.
Ah, yes. This is where you find the restaurants with menus printed in 5 different languages. You have aggressive touts standing on the cobblestones, waving laminated photos of food at you, trying to herd you into a seat.
And once you sit down, you are paying 22 euro for a plate of remarkably mediocre, mass-produced cod. You're paying for the real estate and the view, not the culinary skill.
But the incredible thing is, if you literally just walk 4 steep streets up the hill, you hit the Tasca track.
A completely different world.
Entirely different. You find places with paper tablecloths, handwritten menus entirely in Portuguese with no photos, and absolutely massive portions of incredibly rich food. The tourists are eating at the bottom of the hill. The locals are eating at the top.
Well, let's look at the mechanical pricing realities between these two economies. In the Tasca track, a spicy pork sandwich, a staple called a bafana, at a legendary local spot like Conga, costs 3.50.
3.50. And then you have the famous francesinha. This is a massive, heavy sandwich filled with various meats covered in melted cheese and drowned in a thick tomato and beer sauce.
It's an absolute calorie bomb.
It really is. At a local spot, a standard, high-quality francesinha is about 13.
But we need to highlight a specific scam regarding the francesinha that the data warns about.
Yes, the francesinha premium scam.
It's everywhere now.
Let's explain why this is a trap. The francesinha was historically invented as a way to use up leftover meats. It's a working-class, heavy, caloric meal. But because it became famous on social media, tourist track restaurants started offering a premium version for 18 or even 22 euros.
Which is ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous. They claim it has better cuts of meat, but the reality is they are just stuffing it with cheap, processed sausages and upcharging you massively purely because of its fame.
Locals do not eat francesinhas every day, and you absolutely should not pay a premium for a dish designed around leftovers.
Stick to the authentic basics.
Exactly. Like a pastel de nata, the iconic custard tart, should cost you 1.20, no more. A draft beer, locally ordered as a fino, was £1.50. And a solid glass of house Douro red wine poured from a jug is 3 up.
You also have to navigate this two-tier system in the grocery stores, which is vital if you're staying in an Airbnb. Locals go to the Pingo Doce supermarket to get their staples. There, you can buy chicken breast for £6.50 a kilo and a genuinely great bottle of Douro wine for €4.
But tourists who don't want to walk to the larger supermarkets get trapped buying single bottles of water for €1.20 at the centrally located Minapresso convenience stores.
And over a week, that convenience tax adds up drastically.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But beyond where you buy your food, there is the incredibly stressful etiquette of how you eat it.
This is huge. The most notorious trap for tourists sitting down at a restaurant is the couvert.
This causes immense anxiety for first-time visitors because the mechanics of it are entirely foreign to North Americans.
Imagine this. You sit down at a nice restaurant. You're exhausted, your feet hurt from the hills. The waiter immediately walks over and places a beautiful little plate of fresh bread, local olives, and maybe some cheese right in the center of your table.
Looks great.
Right? You think, wow, the hospitality here is amazing, complimentary snacks. You eat the bread.
And then the bill arrives.
Boom.
You realize that simply touching that bread just cost you between €4 and €8.
Yeah.
In Portugal, the couvert is not free. It is a standard offering. But if you consume any part of it, you pay for it.
If you don't want it, you have to explicitly tell the waiter to take it away the moment they set it down. It's a cultural misunderstanding that creates immediate financial friction and makes tourists feel like they were scammed, even though it's standard local practice.
Another massive friction point is the pace of service. By North American standards, the service in Porto's traditional restaurants is glacially slow.
People get so mad about this.
They do, but we have to explain why it happens. In Portuguese culture, rushing a diner out the door so you can turn the table for the next customer is considered incredibly rude. The table is yours for as long as you want it.
So you will sit there indefinitely. The waiter is not going to drop the check on your table while you're still finishing your wine. You have to explicitly flag them down, make eye contact, and ask for the bill.
They aren't ignoring you. They are actively respecting your time and your right to linger.
It all comes down to understanding the mechanics of the culture and the economics of the geography. Down by the river, you pay a premium for real estate. But there is a brilliant hack noted in the sources.
Oh, the Gaia hack.
Yeah. If you want that high-end dining experience with a view, don't eat in Ribeira. Walk across the bridge to Gaia. You can find exceptional high-end dining where you get a panoramic view of Porto included for free, while eating food where the budget actually went into the ingredients, not the rent.
Knowing these distinct economies, knowing why a befana is £3 at €50, and why touching the bread costs €8 perfectly scales into how you need to plan your daily budget.
Because if you don't understand the mechanisms of this city, you will hemorrhage money.
Let's break down the daily budget survival guide, starting with the absolute baseline, the 45-a-day survivalist. And just to clarify, this budget excludes flights and accommodation. This is purely daily operational cash.
And honestly, it sounds grueling. The data states that at €45 a day, your reality in Porto is extremely physically demanding. Because you cannot afford an Uber or constant funicular tickets, you are walking absolutely everywhere.
Everywhere.
You are surviving on those 3 bufanas for lunch, and you are buying groceries at Pingo Doce to cook pasta in a crowded hostel kitchen for dinner.
And your entertainment is strictly free. Walking across the top of the bridge, sitting in a park, or looking at the azulejo tiles at the train station. You are constantly walking up steep hills while operating on a budget-induced low-calorie diet.
Which is a terrible combination.
It is genuinely physically exhausting to exist in Porto on this budget.
But stepping up to the 100-a-day comfort traveler changes the entire dynamic. The city actually begins to open up to you. You can afford to sit down for a decent pastry and a coffee for breakfast, but crucially, you can afford a 6 Uber ride to skip that brutal uphill climb at the end of the day when your legs are dead.
And that €6 is an investment in your physical stamina for the next day.
Absolutely.
On this budget, you can sit down for a massive 2-hour lunch at a local tasca, and you have enough allocated funds for a 25 boutique port wine tasting in Gaia, far away from the massive crowded tour buses.
Then you have the 250 plus a day splurger. At this level, you aren't just eating Tasca food. You are booking private charters on the Douro River. You are eating at Michelin-starred restaurants like Pedro Lemos.
And the data notes something really interesting regarding the mechanics of luxury pricing here.
What's that?
The luxury food premium in Porto is actually an exceptional value compared to global Tier 1 cities like Paris, London, or New York. You get world-class gastronomy for a fraction of the cost.
And this is a massive, but paying a premium for private car transport in the city is totally useless.
Completely useless.
You can hire a luxury black car, but you are just paying more money to sit in the exact same single-lane, one-way traffic jam as a public bus. The narrow medieval streets do not care how much money you have.
Which is reflected perfectly in the specific budget line items from 2026. Like
Mm-hmm.
a metro ticket is 1.40 a year. A Vodafone SIM card to guarantee connectivity is €15. But the most revealing line item is the funicular dos Condé, which costs €4.50 for a single ride.
I love how the sources frame this specific £4.50. They call it a surprise cost. Think about it. £4.50 is more than the cost of a full Bifana lunch.
Yeah.
But you are paying it strictly as a 3-minute emergency tax. You pay it because you are standing at the bottom of a cliff by the river. You look up at the 300 stone stairs you need to climb to get to your hotel, and your legs completely give out.
You just surrender.
You surrender, and you pay the tax.
It reinforces the core theme of the city. Spending more money doesn't necessarily buy you more geographic freedom. The city's bones dictate the rules for everyone. A luxury traveler's Uber is stuck in the same traffic as the backpacker's bus, and both have to contend with the verticality if they want to explore the historic alleys.
Even with a healthy 100 daily budget, you can easily blow your money and your patience on overhyped delusions. We need to deconstruct the biggest tourist traps in the city, because this is where people really lose their minds and feel cheated.
The most prominent trap, without a doubt, is the Lilo library illusion.
Oh, the famous Livraria Lello.
Yes, it has been massively hyped online, driven by rumors that it inspired the architecture of the Harry Potter series.
Right. You see it on TikTok. It looks magical. Sweeping wooden staircases, stained glass, floor-to-ceiling books. So you show up in person expecting a quiet, mystical bookstore. But what is the actual mechanism of visiting this place?
First, you cannot just walk in. You have to scan a QR code outside and pay anywhere from €8 to €15 just for an entry voucher.
Just to get in line.
Just to get in line. Then, you stand in a queue that wraps entirely around the block, often waiting for over an hour in the sun or the rain.
And once you finally get inside, the reality hits you like a wall. You are packed shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of other sweaty tourists, all aggressively wielding selfie sticks.
It's awful.
It is not a library where you can casually browse books. It is a retail store operating with the aggressive crowd dynamics and throughput of a theme park queue. You can barely move your arms, let alone appreciate the grand staircase, because it is completely obscured by people staging elaborate photos.
The fix provided by the data is incredibly simple. Skip it entirely. Unless you are a dedicated fan who is genuinely going there to purchase a specific edition of a book, it is an exercise in claustrophobic frustration.
But what if I just want to experience gorgeous, historical Portuguese architecture? Where do I go instead?
You walk into the vestibule of the São Bento train station at 7 a.m. It is completely free, there are no queues, and you are surrounded by 20,000 intricate azulejos tiles depicting Portuguese history.
The blue and white ones?
Exactly. The architecture is stunning, and you can actually breathe.
Trap number 2 is what they call the topography miscalculation. We touched on the hills, but we need to explain how this specifically ruins people's days.
It ruins so many days.
You're sitting at home booking an Airbnb, you check Google Maps, and it says the apartment is only 400 meters away from the river. You think, great, 400 meters is a 5-minute walk, I'll just walk from the train.
The failure here is relying on the standard 2D map. What that map doesn't show you is that those 400 meters consists of an almost vertical set of irregular stone stairs called the Escadas do Cotó.
Imagine arriving with your heavy luggage. You commit to the walk thinking it's just a couple of blocks. Within 50 steps, you realize you've made a terrible mistake.
You're dripping sweat.
The wheels of your suitcase are useless on the stairs. Your partner is glaring at you, sweating, and the horrifying realization sets in.
Right.
You have to endure some variation of this grueling vertical climb every single day of your trip.
The mechanical fix for this is non-negotiable. Always use the terrain layer on Google Maps when researching Porto. Look at the elevation lines. And never, under any circumstances, attempt to carry your luggage up from the road.
Just take a cab.
Take an Uber, take the funicular, but do not fight the stairs with a suitcase.
Okay, let's look at the third major trap, the Gaia wine cellar carousel. You go to Porto, you have to drink port wine, right?
Yes, but how you do it matters. Most tourists cross the bridge into Gaia, look at the massive neon signs, and walk straight into the first enormous corporate port lodge they see. places like Sandeman or Taylor's.
And what happens inside?
You pay €20, and you are immediately herded into a massive group of 50 people. You are led through the cellars by a guide who is clearly reciting a tired, memorized script. It feels incredibly processed.
And the tasting at the end is the real insult. You get 2 tiny glasses of their absolute cheapest entry-level ruby port. According to the sources, it tastes aggressively like pure
It
ethanol.
just burns.
You leave feeling processed like cattle, wondering what all the hype about port wine actually is.
The alternative requires just a little bit of physical effort. If you walk 15 minutes further uphill, past the massive corporate lodges, you find smaller independent houses like Churchill's or Quinta do Noval.
And how is the mechanism of that tasting different?
It is entirely personalized. For €25, you book a specific tasting flight in advance. You aren't in a herd of 50 people. You sit in a quiet garden with an actual sommelier who explains the vintages, the aging process, and the nuances of the terroir.
Oh, that's so much better.
You taste high-quality tawnies and vintage ports. It's an education, not a cattle shoot.
Is Porto essentially just a beautiful obstacle course? It sounds like every single famous attraction has a hidden, authentic alternative that is just a 15-minute walk away.
This raises an incredibly important question about how modern travel mechanics work. Social media creates highly localized zones of hyper-tourism. Algorithms push thousands of people to the exact same GPS coordinates to replicate the exact same photo.
Which creates that crush we talked about.
Right. It creates severe localized pressure, but it leaves incredible, authentic experiences almost entirely untouched, just a few streets over.
We see that perfectly in the data's breakdown of scenes versus alternatives. Let's look at Scene A, the sunset trap. Social media tells you that you absolutely must go to Jardim do Moro in Gaia for sunset. The photos look serene.
But the reality?
The reality is you arrive, and you are standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of shouting exchange students. You are listening to 3 different competing Bluetooth speakers blasting different music.
Yeah.
You are standing on patchy grass covered in crushed plastic cups.
It's awful. But the authentic alternative is Passeio das Virtudes. You still get an unobstructed sweeping view of the sun dropping into the Douro River. But instead of exchange students, you are surrounded by local Portuguese workers finishing their day.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
You can buy a cold 2 Superbock beer from the cooperative bar and actually hear the organic hum of the city without the manufactured tourist noise.
Okay, Scene B, the river cruise. You want to get on the water. You pay €18 for the standard 6 bridges cruise. You are packed onto a generic, flat-bottomed boat, baking in the midday sun without shade, listening to a scratchy, pre-recorded audio guide in 4 languages.
Sounds miserable. But the alternative is the Afarada commuter ferry. Walk to the very end of the Gaia waterfront. For £2.50, you board a local ferry. It's a 5-minute ride across the mouth of the river to a small fishing village called Afarada.
What's there?
When you step off, you are in a neighborhood where local families are literally grilling fresh sea bass on small charcoal grills directly on the pavement outside their front doors.
Now that is an experience. Let's do Scene C, the Fado dinner. Fado is the traditional, melancholic Portuguese music. You feel you have to experience it. So you pay €45 for a dinner package in Ribeira.
Which is a mistake.
A huge mistake. You are served mass-produced, bland food in a room with terrible acoustics, watching exhausted musicians play to a room full of tourists who are mostly staring at their phones.
The fix here completely changes the acoustic and cultural experience.
Wow.
Take the metro to the Casa de Música. It is a massive, modernist, concrete polygon, an architectural masterpiece.
That weird-looking building?
Yes. For €15, you can book an acoustic session in a world-class space designed specifically for sound, and you are watching the performance surrounded by actual residents of the city who respect the art form.
But here's the catch. Stepping off that beaten path taking, the local commuter ferry, wandering into the outer neighborhoods for an acoustic show requires confidence. You have to know you are physically safe, and in 2026, you have to know you can stay connected.
Exactly.
Which brings up very specific realities for digital nomads, solo travelers, and families. Let's start with physical safety, because the data here is highly surprising. When travelers ask about safety, they're usually asking about crime. But the #1 risk in Porto is not mugging or pickpocketing.
No, it is severe orthopedic trauma.
Snapped ankles. This isn't a joke. The combination of 40-degree inclines, wet granite cobblestones, and tourists wearing totally inappropriate footwear like smooth-soled sandals or high heels leads to actual physical injuries on a routine basis.
It really does.
You are one slip away from ruining your trip.
And if that mechanical failure of your footwear happens, you need to understand the medical infrastructure you are walking into. The public hospital in Porto, Santo Antonio, is highly competent, but it is deeply overburdened.
So what happens if you go there?
If you show up with a non-life-threatening broken bone or a severe sprain, you will wait for hours in a crowded triage.
So what's the alternative if you're in pain and need help fast?
The world-class private option is CUF Porto. An emergency room visit there will cost you roughly €120 upfront, but the mechanism is entirely different. You will bypass the massive public queues and receive almost immediate care in flawless English. It is the necessary safety net for travelers.
As for daily health logistics, it's very straightforward. The tap water is perfectly safe to drink. The ice in your cocktails is safe. There are no endemic diseases to worry about. No need to pack heavy mosquito repellent. But what about connectivity? Porto has aggressively marketed itself as a massive hub for digital nomads. People go there to work remotely.
The digital nomad infrastructure presents a fascinating clash between ancient architecture and modern technology. The major telecommunication networks, Vodafone and MEO, provide excellent high-speed 5G coverage across the entire city outdoors.
Outdoors being the key word.
Exactly. However, the exact historic romantic apartments that everyone wants to rent are built with massive, incredibly thick granite walls.
Right. The very aesthetic that draws you there, living in a 300-year-old stone building, is the exact thing that fights back against your modern convenience.
Those thick granite walls act like a Faraday cage. They completely kill and block Wi-Fi and 5G signals.
Can't they just install better routers or run new cables?
It's extremely difficult due to strict historic preservation laws. You cannot easily drill through or alter the exterior walls of these UNESCO-protected buildings to lay modern fiber optic cables.
Oh, wow. So you're just stuck.
So if your specific bedroom inside the Airbnb doesn't have its own dedicated router hardwired in, you're going to have zero internet connection. You cannot just assume you will have Zoom-capable Wi-Fi because the listing looks nice.
We also need to look at specific demographic warnings. For solo travelers, particularly solo female travelers, the data is very positive. The city is exceptionally safe, the cultural norms do not tolerate aggressive street harassment, and the local tasca culture is highly social and welcoming.
It's a very warm culture.
However, there is one specific caveat regarding the Sé district, the area immediately surrounding the cathedral.
The geography there consists of steep, incredibly narrow, winding alleyways. Late at night, these alleys are poorly lit and devoid of foot traffic. While violent crime is still very rare, the sheer isolation and darkness of that specific topography can feel intensely intimidating.
Right, you just feel trapped.
The recommendation is to stick to the main illuminated avenues when walking alone after midnight.
And what about families? People want to bring their kids to Europe. The data is brutal on this point.
It is entirely uncompromising. If you have young children, specifically kids under 12, who still need a stroller, the physical reality of Porto is actively hostile to your existence.
Hostile how?
The sidewalks are incredibly narrow, heavily cobbled, and frequently blocked by parked cars that have nowhere else to go. If you bring a standard stroller, the irregular granite will literally rattle the wheels off.
I can't even imagine trying to push a stroller up those hills.
You will spend half your trip lifting the stroller over curves and carrying it up staircases. If you are bringing an infant, you absolutely must use a wearable baby carrier. The city's infrastructure simply does not accommodate wheels.
So if the physical toll of Porto, the snapped ankles, the ruined strollers, the sheer exhaustion, the thick granite blocking your Wi-Fi sounds like too high a price to pay, the sources actually provide specific, calculated backup plans.
Thank goodness for backup plans.
What are the alternatives if you want the romance, the history, and the food of Portugal, but without the orthopedic risk and the crowding?
Plan B is Guimarães. The data highlights this as a destination that offers authentic medieval Portuguese history, stunning stone architecture, and massive public squares, but entirely without the overwhelming cruise ship crowds that choke Porto.
And the economics of Guimarães are amazing. It is highly accessible. You take a direct commuter train from Porto, it takes 70 minutes and costs exactly 3.20.
That's a steal.
Once you are there, the pricing drops dramatically. A beautiful boutique hotel room is €80 compared to Porto's 140. A traditional heavy dinner is €15, and espresso is 80 cents. Overall, it is roughly 40% cheaper across the board.
It is fundamentally designed for the traveler who wants to sit in a historic plaza, read a book, and drink wine without being aggressively hassled by touts.
And Plan C is Coimbra. Coimbra offers the steep, dramatic river valley streets and the beautiful, decaying azulejo piles that people look for in Porto, but its economy is driven by an authentic, massive academic culture rather than a transient tourist economy.
It is home to one of the oldest universities in Europe.
How does that academic focus change the logistics for a traveler?
It changes everything about the pricing and the vibe. Coimbra is an hour away from Porto on the fast train. Because it caters to tens of thousands of local students, the infrastructure has to remain affordable.
So the prices are locked in by the locals?
Beautiful rooms average €70 a night. And you can easily find incredible, authentic Tasca meals for €10 because students refuse to pay tourist prices. Going to Coimbra stretches your daily travel budget by a full third compared to staying in Porto.
So with all this incredibly dense data on the table, the hidden costs of the couvert, the punishing mechanics of the hills, the elaborate tourist traps, and the highly viable alternatives, it is time to deliver the final verdicts.
The moment of truth.
Who is Porto genuinely for in 2026? Let's run through the specific traveler personas. First, the survivalist or backpacker on €45 a day.
The verdict here is a definitive NO. At €45 a night just for a basic bed in a noisy hostel, combined with the massive physical exertion required when you cannot afford transport to bypass the hills, you are simply priced out of the experiences that define the city.
We will be miserable.
The strong recommendation is to take that exact budget, move to Coimbra, and actually enjoy your vacation.
Second persona, the comfort traveler. The mid-range budget, someone willing to spend 100 to €150 a day.
This is a conditional MBE. It works, but only if you adhere to strict rules. You must have the budget to utilize Ubers to bypass the worst topographical climbs at the end of the day.
And the discipline to wake up early?
Yes, you must have the discipline to wake up at 7:30 a.m. to experience the city before the tour buses and the crowds descend. And crucially, this is best attempted exclusively in the secret season of late September or October. If you go in August on this budget, you will be overwhelmed.
Third, the luxury traveler, the 250 plus a day budget.
A resounding yes. At the absolute top end of the market, Porto remains an exceptional value proposition. For $450 a night, you can secure a panoramic, multi-room suite in Gaia overlooking the river, a room that would easily cost €1,200 or more in Paris, London, or Rome.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
The luxury gastronomy is world-class and comparatively affordable. The city caters beautifully to high-end capital.
Fourth, families and groups with young children.
An absolute NO. The transport reality is too complex. The metro does not reach the deepest parts of the historic center. The narrow, crowded, cobbled sidewalks are a nightmare for managing young children, and the sheer verticality of the city makes moving as a group exhausting and frustrating.
Finally, the digital nomad or the long-term solo traveler looking to relocate for a month or more.
This one is a split decision in the data, and the tension here is fascinating. On one side, you have the argument that the geo-arbitrage, the idea of moving to a cheaper country to leverage a stronger currency, is totally dead in Porto.
Right, because renting an apartment in the center now costs as much as renting in Madrid or Berlin.
But the local salaries haven't kept up at all, meaning nomads are directly contributing to a highly painful local housing crisis by paying inflated rents.
It's a huge ethical and economic issue.
But the counter-argument presented is that nomads are no longer moving there just for cheap rent. They are paying for the established community. The density of creative professionals, the ease of social integration with other expats, the high safety profile for solo travelers, and the incredible food scene justify the premium cost.
However, the data stresses that this only works if you commit to living outside the congested, overpriced Ribera zone and integrate into neighborhoods like Setofeta.
It's a real tension between seeking an ideal romantic community for yourself and inadvertently contributing to the displacement of the very local culture you came to experience.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. The overwhelming takeaway from all these sources is that 2026 Porto is absolutely not the cheap, effortless Lisbon alternative of the past.
It really isn't.
It is a complex, hyper-vertical city with an economy operating on two drastically different tiers. It heavily rewards the travelers who do their research, who understand the calendar matrix, who know how to avoid the Francesinha scam, and who are willing to walk 15 minutes uphill to find a sommelier instead of a corporate tour guide.
And it aggressively, financially, and physically punishes those who just show up expecting a cheap beach town and blindly follow the social media flock to the river.
You have to travel smarter, question the hype, check the terrain layer on your map, and truly understand the physical mechanics of what you are walking into.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. The topographical bottlenecks, the shifting economics of the taskas, the physical realities of the weather. But there's one final, larger implication to all of this data that I think is worth mulling over.
What's that?
In a world where global cities are endlessly being paved over, flattened out and homogenized purely for tourist comfort and convenience, did the brutal physical constraints of Porto actually save its soul?
Oh, that's interesting.
Perhaps those punishing 30-degree inclines, the slick granite cobblestones, and the driving horizontal Atlantic rain are the city's ultimate unyielding defense mechanisms. They force travelers to either adapt to the rhythm of the hills or leave. And by doing so, the geography itself preserves the authentic Portuguese culture just a few streets away from the chaos.
A city that refuses to be flattened. I love that. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, check the weather, and we hope this helps you travel a little smarter.